Participants received 2 sessions with MDMA at the dosage of 187.5 milligrams for each session. Psychological support was provided before, during, and after each session. Significantly, at 9 months post-detox, the average units of alcohol consumption by participants was 18.7 units per week, compared to 130.6 units per week before the detox.
Yeah, I have no desire, nor have I ever, to risk having a terrifying trip with a huge dosage of any psychedelic. But I think all of this is really interesting and promising, and it gets to the root of addiction being a biochemical disorder, which is also probably, by extension, a neural circuitry disorder. So I don't know exactly what's going on with these compounds, but we definitely need research into it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elevation Recovery Podcast, your hub for addiction recovery strategies, hosted by Chris Scott and Matt Finch.
Welcome to episode 174. There is, in the alcohol use disorder world and the biotech world, a new study came out. This is from February 19th. It says London, February 19th, 2021. This is a press release from a biotech company from London, I believe. Awaken Life Sciences Incorporated announces today the publication of results from its study on MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for alcohol use disorder. So this first study was an open label proof of concept study. So, it wasn't placebo or double blind, anything like that. Just to see if people would get side effects from the MDMA, if there'd be toxicity, if they didn't handle it well. The results were phenomenal. So let's see. Results published today in the Journal of Psychopharmacology show that MDMA treatment, so that's 3,4-methyl-dioxymethamphetamine, I'm sure I pronounced it wrong, was well tolerated by all participants. No unexpected adverse events were observed, and psychosocial functioning improved across the cohort. So before I read on, a lot of times with ecstasy on the black market, it's cut. It's cut with stuff like amphetamines, and I've had MDMA cut with mescaline and heroin even. That was really fun stuff. But anyways, a lot of times it's cut and it's dirty. And a lot of times when people are doing it, they're dancing all night, or they're having sex, or they're listening to music, they're partying, they're drinking, probably not in a psychotherapeutic setting, drinking water. So they wanted to make sure with pure MDMA, it's a lot cleaner, obviously. So over an 8-week course of recovery-based therapy, participants received 2 sessions with MDMA at the dosage of 187.5 milligrams for each session. Psychological support was provided before, during, and after each session. Significantly, at 9 months post-detox, the average units of alcohol consumption by participants was 18.7 units per week, compared to 130.6 units per week before the detox. So essentially, and there was no control group. So this is just a proof of concept, tolerability study. So anyways, but that's gigantic. 2 therapy sessions psychotherapy assisted with MDMA, and the dosages I talked about. I didn't recommend those. So anyways, this compares favorably to a previous observational study by the same team with a similar population of people with AUD. Dr. Ben Sensa, Awaken's chief medical officer, commented, "This is the first clinical study into the potential effectiveness of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy as a treatment for alcohol use disorder. It provides preliminary support for the safety and tolerability of MDMA post-detox. Now this company is designing further trials to examine this MDMA-assisted post-detox therapy. I think they're going into phase 2B clinical trials." Now, this is the last part I want to read. The study team was chaired by Awaken's chief scientific advisor, Professor David Nutt, Department of Medicine, Imperial College London. I love Imperial College London. He added, "This clinical study supports the practical experience of many thought leaders in psychiatry that psychedelic-assisted treatments And MDMA is not actually technically a psychedelic, including MDMA. Some people call it a psychedelic. I don't choose to. It's not one of the classical ones. For mental health disorders, have the potential to deliver significantly better outcomes. Let's see. Anyways, I read a bunch of articles on that, and I've talked about MindMed before too. That's an American biotech company. And while they are not studying MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for AUD, they're in early trials of studying MDMA mixed with LSD. Right now, they're studying to see if MDMA could make the kind of weird feelings of LSD, because people can have bad trips on LSD. It can, especially for people with high trait neuroticism, people that are anxious, they can kind of trip out. So what MindMed is doing here in America is they're trying to combine MDMA with LSD in a way. I've done that once before, Chris. It's called candy flipping. And I took mushrooms once with ecstasy, which is called hippie flipping. Here's how I want to segue into this. And we could talk about anything today. We don't even have to talk about that. But when I was 23 years old, I was camping at Leo Carrillo State Beach, a little bit north of Malibu here in Southern California. A beautiful campground I've been going to since I was 13. The movie Point Break, starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, where he's a FBI agent that learns how to surf to try and find some bank robbers who he believes are all surfers due to his research he's done. And so on that movie, there's a fight between Anthony Kiedis, the singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers, his surf crew, and Keanu Reeves, and they start beating the crap out of him. Anyways, those showers in that beach are on, this is a famous beach. A lot of movies and shows have been filmed there. So I was staying at this awesome place, and we were camping there. We made a batch of really strong psilocybin containing mushroom tea, very powerful tea. And we had ecstasy tablets that were double dosers, and they were cut with heroin and mescaline. And so the last night we were at the campground, I had mushroom psilocybin tea, very powerful, really strong dose, mixed with MDMA that was also mixed with mescaline and heroin. So normally I would have had like trippy out stuff, right? I had a freaking psychedelic-assisted self-therapy. This is what happened. Before we went on the camping trip, and we drove about 4.5 hours north, me and my surf buddies, who were also drinking and drugging buddies. This was back when I was a cannabis salesperson, back when it was legal in California. Now it's recreationally legal, back when it was illegal. So we get up there, and I had a really bad fight with my girlfriend. I was a dirtbag back then. I was narcissistic, egomaniac, drug dealer, lots of popularity. And so I was not a good boyfriend at all. I was a young idiot. And I forget what I had done. I had done something really, really, really bad. Super bad. I felt awful about it, but not too awful. I was like, when I was on that combination of psychedelics and then some MDMA in there too, all those things, I was in the tent. All my friends were around, and a lot of them were drinking around the fire. And there was a really drunk buddy of mine. I'm no longer friends with him, but back then I was friends. He was just getting hammered, not doing any of the stuff that we were doing, the mind openers. So I started to get so annoyed with him being like this unconscious drunk idiot. I was just like, this guy's like, when you're tripping on that type of stuff and you see someone doing that type of drunk behavior, wow, you start to really just see just how dumb it is. Anyways, so I went in the tent to be alone, and I could hear them talking out there a little bit, but I had this blanket, this really nice soft blanket, which I had purchased in Mexico in Tijuana at the border. Really soft blanket, really nice. I was in the tent, and that blanket right before my eyes morphed perfectly into my girlfriend. Perfect. My girlfriend at the time, her name was Stephanie. The blanket turned into her. The detail was crazy. I had a full-on conversation with her. She was whispering like, "You really, really hurt me." And I was talking back to her. And this went on for 10 minutes. And my friends were like, "What are you doing in there?" They're like, "Matt's tripping." I'm like, "I'm talking to my girlfriend, Stephanie." The blanket turned into her. She's like, "No, listen to me. Don't talk to them." That shit went down. And since that happened, when I went back, I apologized to her. I really realized how much I hurt your feelings. I understand now. And I told her about my psychedelic assisted therapy experience, to where seems like the combination of substances tapped into what was going on in my unconscious, things that where I had hurt other people and stuff. And it started to provide me with what was necessary to fully understand what I had did, why it was wrong, why I should apologize. So I know I just went off on a long thing here, but I really believe that the future is, and maybe not even psychedelics, but the future is these scientists and psychiatrists and doctors all working together to create these either use these compounds or create novel compounds that can shift our consciousness so much. Because when you're on MDMA and one of these study things, if you're on a dosage of pure MDMA and you're getting therapy in that state of consciousness, I have to feel that that would just have huge success rates, because that shift in consciousnness, and you become much more impressionable. It like dissolves the ego, takes away your judgmental mind. And so you're more easily able to actually make connections, open up, and see things differently. There's more to it than that, but this is the first time I've seen MDMA being studied for alcoholism. MDMA-assisted psychotherapy, that is.
Yeah, that was an epic monologue. I was considering stopping you at one point, but I'm glad I didn't. I think we could actually have entire snippets of the Matt Finch show talking about your experiences. And this is why we love you. Because anytime I've ever had a client where, I was strictly alcohol, pretty much. And I call you up, Matt, I have a client, he's done this, this, and that, and he's on this, and Matt's like, it's fine. I've done all that stuff. I was on a beach once and I mixed them all together. So yeah, that's why we're a good duo. But really interesting stuff. I feel like that's the same company, MindMed, right? That has they're also isolating ibogaine, right? And trying to make is it MC18 or 18MC, or is that a different company?
Well, actually, I forget his name, but someone in the 1990s, I believe, Stan something, I think. He's the one that created the first analogs of ibogaine with either zero or less hallucinogenic side effects and neurotoxicity side effects. And so 18MC was not the first one they did, but they did several. So I think 18MC has actually been perfected since the 1990s, but the team back then didn't have enough funding, and it costs a lot of money to do these FDA trials, right? Millions.
Right. Well, now we've got guys like Tim Ferriss, and other,
Kevin O'Leary,
people.
Someone purchased 18MC. I forget. They got Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank as a venture capitalist involved. So now they've got the money, the brains, the passion, and they're doing the studies. They're studying ibogaine, 18MC, the derivative of that. They're studying DMT, LSD combined with MDMA, and also DMT and psilocybin, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I have no desire, nor have I ever, to risk having a terrifying trip with a huge dosage of any psychedelic. But I think all of this is really interesting and promising. And it gets to the root of addiction being a biochemical disorder, which is also probably, by extension, a neural circuitry disorder. So I don't know exactly what's going on with these compounds, but we definitely need research into it, given the state of the bleak and uncompelling state of traditional treatment and outcomes. I mean, all of this should be welcome to anyone who cares about outcomes. It's my understanding that with MDMA, you're primarily targeting serotonin receptors. I could be wrong. I don't know a huge amount about these drugs, but that you should take 5-HTP or L-tryptophan after using that drug, or else you risk creating some kind of deficiency. So hopefully they're using all of this with nutritional considerations as well. Did you read anything about that?
They're not. None of the companies are. They're all specialists. So the the biotech companies, whether they're in, at least the ones that I've been following, nothing to do with nutrition, unfortunately. It's just psychedelics assisted therapy or next generation psychedelics, such as the 18MC, which is ibogaine, but doesn't make you hallucinate, doesn't make you have the neurotoxic effects, but it does have the brain rebuilding. With MDMA, yeah, it does affect serotonin hardcore. Usually with the pure MDMA, I've taken pure MDMA probably 2 or 3 times in my life, and I never had the ecstasy hangover after those ones. It was only when I had stuff that was cut, and especially if I was drinking or something. But even better than 5-HTP or tryptophan is smoking some South African kanna root powder after MDMA. That's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor that's natural, and when you smoke it, it's an empathogen. You know what? They could do freaking South African kanna root powder vaporizers, and that would be amazing. Oh my gosh. Somebody, here's a business idea for someone. South African kanna root powder, portable vaporizer, so you don't burn it and get the high temperature combustions, the free radicals. Vaporizer, so it's low temperature, no free radicals. Natural serotonin reuptake inhibitor, does not need weeks and weeks or months to work like medicine reuptake inhibitors. It starts working right away. That's a empathogen, muscle relaxer, anti-anxiety, antidepressant, helpful for getting people off SSRIs. There's just so many cool inventions out there waiting. MDMA combined with LSD, combined with psychotherapy, South African kanna root powder vaporizer, and maybe you put eucalyptus in it too to open the lungs up better. There's just so many things that technology and science can do to get rid of the addiction epidemic. They'll never get rid of addiction, but the epidemic.
I've seen so many people use nutritional strategies alone, at least at first. And then the people who are successful long-term tend to build on theirs. So they regain some sense of stability first, and then they get into something, whether it's exercise or meditation or just a total lifestyle overhaul, or they read books like The Untethered Soul or The Power of Now, and they just start living more consciously. They kind of get in touch with, cosmic consciousness or God or nature or whatever you want to call it. And that's kind of been my story as well. I've always had a lot of curiosity about these shortcuts to powerful, even mystical experiences. I've never had them myself, unless you count some like natural experiences I've had. Say, after a long run, you get that runner's high. I've actually felt extremely empathic, and I don't even like running, but I used to run just because it was a distraction from my cravings. So I would go, even if it was 3 a.m. I've talked about going for like late night jogs, which may or may not be a good idea depending on where you live and what's going on out there. But I was lucky I could go, and I would just run until I felt this overwhelming, probably endorphin rush. But I'm sure I was releasing dopamine and serotonin as well, obviously in a different and more sustainable way than when you artificially boost these things with alcohol. And I just remember feeling this kind of like peace, but also a sense of empathy, sense of being outside myself, even just from running. I know a lot of endurance athletes get there. And I've also experienced it from music, actually, sometimes randomly, unexpectedly, even music that I don't typically listen to. The other night, I was playing pool at my place with a buddy. We had just had a good time. We brought my dogs downtown to a dog-friendly restaurant, and it was sunny. It was a really nice day. So I absorbed some sun. I was feeling relaxed. We were playing some pool, and I have this sound system here, and he put on, I think it was like Swedish House Mafia. It was just like old house, not that old, but like house music, and just kind of turned it up, and we're playing pool. And I got in this kind of altered state of consciousness, which I would have assumed back when I drank, I needed alcohol in order to get. So I would assume, not having had the experience with psychedelics or things like MDMA, that altering your consciousness with those things is an easier way to get what I've only had either unexpectedly or through really intense effort like exercise. I've never been able to create a deliberate shortcut to get there. I think some people might get there with meditation, but it could also be really useful for certain people. I include myself in this category, who tend to be type A, and for whatever reason can be uptight unintentionally and even unconsciously around family members or around people who you know. And I tend to let loose every now and then. And I have a dirty sense of humor, as you know, that kind of helps me let loose. But I can carry over my uptightness, which is some kind of relic from either, I don't know, being type A as a kid or working in finance. I don't know what it is. But I don't like that persona of mine. I don't like, I accept it. It's part of who I am. It's fine. And I get stuff done. I can be no nonsense. But sometimes I get tired of the no nonsense version of myself. And I just want to, kind of let myself melt a little bit, be more easygoing, be more relaxed, laugh at things a little more. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from substances that help them do that. And then they can actually, especially in the context of therapy, if they have traumas, if they have problems with people, just stop whatever repression that they have. For me, whatever repression I have is pretty low level, luckily. I don't have any serious traumatic experiences, that I don't have flashbacks, I don't have PTSD. But even for me, it's nice. I'm happy when I get those either exercise induced or music induced or whatever induced. It could be induced by a scent or just being outside, and it's really nice. Your consciousness shifts a little bit. You become more open. Maybe you would talk to someone in a way that you wouldn't normally talk. You kind of let go of yourself. You can feel your ego melting a little bit. I imagine the experiences with these substances are more intense and would be a more reliable way to get there, kind of on command or on demand, rather than going out and running for a bunch of hours, going in the sun, and then listening to Swedish House Mafia while playing pool.
Well, I haven't heard Swedish House Mafia, but I assume it's at least slightly similar.
You probably heard it like a mall or something.
It's a genre of music, right?
It's kind of like house, like club music.
Well, I love trance. I love trance and progressive. I think I'd love house. I don't even really like cleaning our home unless I'm listening to trance or some type of music. Now, I do it without music sometimes, but yeah, natural highs from music. But the thing is people need to first usually get off of a substance if they're dependent, if they're physiologically dependent. So especially with people that are on high dose opioids or benzos or something, they are the worst is when people have been on long-term methadone or Suboxone or Subutex. A lot of the people if they've been on these medicines long-term, they'll stop working as good, and their whole personality just goes flat. They have no positive emotions, and they kind of feel like a robot. They're never happy, but they're never super depressed, or some of them even are. Cognitive decline and many other symptoms. And with them, if they go for a run, if they go listen to music, none of it's going to work, because those long-acting opioids long-term have just destroyed their endocrine system. But once a person, if someone's not in a huge situation like that, I teach people all the time, exercise in the morning, at least if it's 20 minutes of cardio, even on a treadmill. Say someone's going to wake up and normally they're a morning drinker. Let's say they start drinking around 10 a.m. If you do that on a regular basis, do a 20-minute, do a warm up, and then 10, 15 minutes of a level 6 or 7 intensity till you get a good little sweat, then start cooling down. You're either not going to drink, or you're going to probably drink less. Another thing too that helped me when I was binge drinking and physiologically dependent sometimes is, instead of drinking as soon as I got the urge, I made this rule. I'm going to go chug whole milk until I'm full, and then I'll see if I still want to drink alcohol. 100% of the time when I did that, I didn't drink. I was full on milk, and I wasn't a person that liked to drink while eating. It was it's going to waste the buzz. I like to be on an empty stomach when I drank, so I could feel it, so I could get blasted or not be so anxious and not be so afraid of life. So there's so many tips.
Well, milk contains substances that binds to opiate receptors. So that could be another reason. I actually had a client once who was addicted to both alcohol and milk. And I'd never heard of that before. I couldn't tell if she was joking. She was very serious.
Are you serious?
She would drink an entire gallon of milk. in one sitting if she wasn't drinking.
Oh,
And then
wow.
she would drink both. It's a real thing for some people. And I've noticed I have a good amount of self-discipline ever since I restored my willpower through, quitting drinking, biochemical repair, good sleep. I have pretty good willpower, but I can't quit eating cheese. I've tried. I had a functional
Why would
medicine
you want to?
stop. Well, yeah, that was part of it. I couldn't think of any real
A
benefits.
little bit here and there, man. A little bit here and there.
I have cheese with my eggs every morning. I need it. I love it, and it makes me happy. So it could be that I'm getting a little bit of a high from that cheese. Yeah.
You are. Julia Ross wrote about that probably in The Diet Cure, her first book, but for sure in The Mood Cure, there was a big section on milk, basically dairy foods, and especially the synergy of dairy and white flour, which is why pizza is so addictive. You got that refined white flour just loaded with cheese, and all those dairy and the white flour can both on their own, but especially synergistically combined, create exorphins. So our endorphins are our endogenous opioid pain-killing chemicals that our brain, our neuropharmacy makes. When we eat cheese, and especially when we do it with white flour, that creates exorphins. So they are a lot like endorphins, but they're not endogenous. They're coming from the substance. So, and the more you do that, the more you're going to become dependent on it. So I love cheese and I love milk, but I'm using organic grass-fed stuff, and I don't, I do it in moderation with lots of other healthy things. So absolutely, exorphins from the milk. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a combination of being full, so I didn't want to drink, but also all that milk, the exorphins, the protein, the fat, the sugar. It gave me a lot of stuff that was like it got rid of my hypoglycemia, at least for the moment, because I'd be craving alcohol because of the super low blood sugar from hypoglycemia. Chug a bunch of whole milk, the hypoglycemia would be gone, and I wouldn't feel like drinking. And so,
better to be addicted to milk than alcohol. If you can do one or the other, it's probably easier to taper off of milk, generally speaking, than alcohol. I bet you could use the Sinclair method, for someone who has an actual dairy problem. Like, let's say someone has a serious problem where they can't stop eating pizza. I bet, the naltrexone would help them dampen down the endorphin, the binding of those exorphins to their endorphin centers.
Oh man, I love remember that episode we did on low dose naltrexone? Since then, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes because everyone should listen to that episode if they have mystery illnesses or things like chronic pain, chronic fatigue, addiction, mental health, which is probably most of the people listening to this. With the LDN, I now found a place, well, actually a client found it and then showed it to me. I was like, wow, thanks for sending me this. It's awesome. I think it's called agelessrx.com. And it's a really cool website with lots of different anti-aging things on there. One of them is low dose naltrexone. And all you have to do is fill out a little online questionnaire, and they have doctors that can approve it and prescribe it, and then they mail it to you. So, I mean, some of the websites that I've been seeing lately where you can go buy really powerful NAD plus 24-hour patches. The LDN, low dose naltrexone, you can get glutathione injections and all sorts of other ones. Another one is ivmenow.com and the other one's agelessrx.com. No affiliation with either one of them, but they have really cool biohacking. A lot of it's either medicines or nutrients and really cool delivery systems like injections, patches.
The IV Me Now is kind of so I have a dog who's decided to put her head on the bottom of my table here. The IV Me Now is interesting because you actually inject yourself. That's kind of ballsy. I mean, I saw that and I thought, I don't know if I want to be sticking myself with needles, but any way you can get your nutrients in, and probably really helpful, especially for people with gut issues who might not be absorbing as much. And some people are caught by surprise with gut issues. So alcohol is notorious for damaging the gut. You can usually repair it, but it can take some time. L-glutamine is really good for gut repair. So megadosing that, absorb some under the tongue, but swallow whatever you don't absorb that way. So you get your craving relief, but then L-glutamine goes to work, helping to repair the digestive tract. You might need to have IV nutrients for a while. And you can go to a functional medicine center. You can get a Myers cocktail, which is just some basic nutrients. Now you can get NAD plus injections as well. But the IV Me Now is an interesting concept.
And I found out about that from a client as well. But I'm the one who told her about it initially. Here's how that went. We used to have a San Diego NAD treatment center here, and they were trained by, or at least the main doctor there was trained by Dick Medier, who's the founder of Springfield Wellness Center, Brain Restoration Therapy, which is the longest running NAD treatment center in America. They've been doing it more than 20 years. They're the ones that have the shit down awesome, and they get the best NAD. Dr. Ken Starr of Ken Starr MD Wellness Center here in Central California. He's about 6 hours north from me. Maybe 7 or 8 years ago, he went and trained in Louisiana under Dick Medier for a week, learning how to do NAD plus infusion therapy for addiction medicine to detox people off alcohol and substances. So the San Diego NAD Center, which is like 15 minutes away from my house, they trained under Dick too, and they were doing it the right way. But at the start of the pandemic, like no one was coming in to get treatment. I think the business was probably flailing for a while before that anyways. They moved to Florida, to Boca Raton, which is a real rich area of Florida. I think Tony Robbins lives there. I saw a 6-day seminar with Tony Robbins, Date with Destiny, in Boca Raton. It's a wonderful place, really beautiful. But anyways, so they moved there and they started that new website. It's the same treatment center, but instead of having like this physical drug detox place, now they're selling NAD plus patches, very powerful ones, and these injections from that website. And so they're doing it, which is really smart. They kind of shifted from a model that wasn't working to one that is working. And now I get to, so anyways, that lady, my client, called up that place and they had told her, well, no, we're not in San Diego anymore, but we have this website, Boca Raton, Florida, it's based out of. And so I'm just all about finding these resources. And because, gut issues, oh my gosh, I think I've had some gut issues lately, even doing all the things that I'm doing to help prevent that, like been a little bit bloated here and there. Usually comes from eating out because of the omega-6 oils and the rancid oils, but I don't eat out that much. Anyways, drugs and alcohol one day will not be, to anyone listening to this right now, you can rewire your brain so powerfully. If you knew me when I was like 23 or even 30 or even 32 or even 35, a few years after substance addiction, and you would just see that I'm not even this. I may look similar to how I looked before, but I'm completely different. And regarding the personality, Chris, I used to be extremely, never type A, but type T. Dr. David Schechter of Mind Body Medicine, he's my chronic pain doctor that helped me get rid of chronic pain. He told me that I was a type T. That's what he refers to as a tension generating person, someone that places such high demands on themselves that they're constantly creating all this unneeded tension and pressure, and you're always driving yourself. It's like this ratio of too much cracking the whip, the tyranny of the shoulds. I should be doing that. I need to do this. It should be too much of that and not enough. What's the word that he called it? Not enough things like, I can't think of the term, but things like eating an ice cream cone or going to play down at the beach, play Frisbee or something like that. These kind of soothing behaviors.
And rejuvenation.
Yeah. So I was too much of the super ego, the parent trying to control everything and create an awesome life and all that, because before, during addiction, the kid was in control. It was my child. Just, I want to have fun and pleasure and debauchery and heathenism, just crazy stuff. So now this new person overcompensated, and I can't do any of that stuff. I got to be serious. And so then it took me years, but now he said, you can't really like totally change your personality. At least most people can't, but you can bring a level 10 tension on a scale of 1 to 10, you could bring it down to a 7 maybe, or a 6, or if you're already at a 7, maybe. So that's what I've done, is I've learned to much more playful, much more just not driving myself, not creating tension, more of understanding that life, everything's happening, everything's going on. And I can view that as, oh, everything's fucked up. Or I can view that as, yeah, some things are fucked up, but most things are great. And I'm going to focus on that. So yeah, when people are generating too much tension, that can lead to, that's what led to my chronic pain. I did have an injury, but it was the tension and the obsession and the compulsion studying these chronic pain recovery methods and then trying them and always being obsessed with whether it was shoulder pain or neck pain, scared that it was something structural, that I was fucked up forever, that I'd never be able to surf again, never be able to work out again or properly. It consumed my life for years. And it was right after I ended my opioid and other addictions. And so really now that I'm looking at the first 5, 6, 7 years of recovering from substances, I had to go through chronic pain, a bunch of other bad habits. You could even call them addictions. But what I realized was you need to play in life. You need to, well, I need to. I'm not teaching anyone else what they need to do, but I needed to be more playful, much more humor, watch more comedy movies, stand-up comedy, do pranks around the house with us, just be silly. And now I've made that something where I intentionally did it from time to time to a daily part of my existence that's automatic. So
Yeah,
I
I've
don't even
noticed it. That's why when I came to visit you, you made me believe there was a shark right next to me as soon as we went into the Pacific. But your pranks will never work on me again. Uh, but I'm glad you do that. And you seem way more zen and relaxed and present every progressive time I've come out to visit. So it seems like you've done a lot even within the last couple of years on that front. And I've been working on that as well. But you seem very like in the zone. And it seems to me that a lot of tension comes from trying to live in the future, or perhaps dwelling on the past as well. It's I'm just about done with the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I intentionally read that after reading The Untethered Soul, which I liked a lot, by Michael Singer. And an interesting little trick in The Power of Now is, he says, if you don't know what it's like to be present or to not live in the future, where you're anxious and doing what ifs all the time, or in the past where you're depressed and you're reflecting on how you could have done something differently. And he said, she said, all that kind of stuff, ruminating and having fake conversations about, that already happened. If you don't know what it's like to live in the present, then try this experiment. Close your eyes for a few seconds and say to yourself, I wonder what thought will pop up next. And most people, when they do that, will get at least a couple seconds of no thoughts. And maybe you notice the air conditioner running, or maybe you notice that the sun's out. And that's what it's like to be present. I'm not a Zen master, but I think that's what it's like to be more Zen than usual. And I've had glimpses of that even before reading this book over the past year. I actually had my first real glimpse of that was when I was in the detox center, and I went to this little chapel. I've discussed this before, not for a while, but I went to this little chapel. I was maybe a week off of alcohol. I think, tapering off my benzos, but I wasn't high on my benzos anymore. And I noticed the sun creeping towards me. And I took that to be, it was like a spiritual experience, that everything was going to be all right. I couldn't describe how that method of being or state of consciousness was different from anything I'd experienced before, until I started reading about meditation and being present and living consciously. That's what it was. I wasn't trying to live in the future, and I wasn't stuck in the past. I was right there for probably 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. And it was pleasant, and it was blissful, and it was relaxing, and I felt centered. And none of those things really should have been possible at that point. I was pretty biochemically out of sorts. It might have helped that I hadn't yet fully tapered off the benzodiazepines, but and I had a lot of trouble in the following months trying to get my brain back in order. The struggle was far from over, but I had a glimpse then of what could be possible, what my life could be like, not in terms of external achievements or even in terms of what other people who I cared about thought of me or things that I did, but what my state of consciousness could be like if I decided to dwell in that spot at all times, not worry about the past, not worry about the future, but just be there. Yeah, I think we've come full circle because, that kind of relates to maybe what people are getting out of these substance-induced experiences, which are, I call them shortcuts, but I think shortcuts can be a good thing. I can't remember who said it, but someone who was a proponent of psychedelics once said, look, you can get this state, you can achieve this state that you get from whatever it was. I can't remember. Maybe it was DMT or LSD, probably not DMT. Maybe it was psilocybin or something. So you can achieve a psychedelic experience if you do Kundalini yoga for like 40 years or something, or you can just take the substance and check it out for yourself. So I'm a fan of anything that helps people. We're very open-ended here.
Yeah, it was years and years after, actually more than a decade after that camping night I told you about in Malibu. I camped in Malibu in Mexico a lot. Both start with M. More than a decade after that night in Malibu, drinking the mushroom tea with the MDMA cut with heroin and mescaline, having a conversation with my girlfriend that before she was my girlfriend, it was a blanket. Then it was like, and we were actually talking. So like 10 years after that, more than 10 years after that, I went to a Qigong and food healing 4-day seminar. And I think it was the first day, halfway through the day, we did something called the breath empowerment. I think another name for that is breath of fire. There's different names for it. He calls it the breath empowerment. It's a 45-minute guided breathing exercise. There was 300 of us in this San Diego Convention Center seminar, all lying on our yoga mats down. And a Canadian lady was guiding us through this. There's 2 sets of breathing. One, you're both lying on your back. It's this deep, sharp breath through your nose where you're breathing like from your nose, your upper chest. And you blow it out. And you do that for a while, and then you go to Qigong, deep belly breathing for a while, and then you do the crazy breathing again. And after 45 minutes, towards the very end, my arms were like super heavy, and they felt like they were cramping everywhere. And I was like feeling really just super hyper oxygenated. And then finally, I peaked, and my arms went down, and I just felt this rushing of energy and chi. I felt rushing of chi going through all my meridians, popping right out of just Kundalini awakening. I'd never had a Kundalini experience. Went right above. I started flooding tears. I'm starting to refeel it right now. Tears of absolute joy. My heart was just love, tears, joy. That was the most spiritual experience of my entire life. That was from nothing but breathing. So we have all the raw ingredients in our brains and in our bodies to create these amazing experiences. We don't need psychedelics. If you're intent on getting them without Kundalini, yoga, there's these breathing exercises, 9 breath methods, another one. So yeah, I mean, they can be achieved a lot of ways. Many years of meditation, a 45-minute breath empowerment, a 15-minute smoking some DMT trip, or an hour MDMA psychedelic or other drug assisted therapy like that. So yeah, there's so many different options. When I first started looking for addiction treatment options, I'm sure there was more out than I knew of, but boy, at least online, it was not a lot of information. Now there's getting to be more and more, and people are starting to see that addiction's a huge problem. Just in this last year with COVID and everything, and more people becoming addicted, seems like it's in the mainstream media a lot more now, which I think is really good.